You didn't stumble here, you were summoned. Not by an algorithm, not by luck, but by the same hidden intelligence that threads stars into constellations and thoughts into turning points. You feel it in the quiet, between heartbeats, the prickle on your skin when a truth is about to land. Something has been watching the watcher in you, and tonight it stepped forward. The observer loop turned back on itself, and in that reflexive flash, a door you couldn't name swung open. Listen, the quantum field has been leaning toward you for days, maybe years, pressing signals through the seams of ordinary time. A phrase repeating in separate conversations, a number stalking your clocks. The sudden weight of a memory that isn't yours and yet fits your life like it's always lived here. These aren't accidents, they're coherence attempting to form. Synchronicity isn't cute. It's the instrument panel of your awakening, lighting up in sequence to tell you the craft is ready. You've felt the static, the inner weather turning strange, sleep that tangles rather than restores, moments when the room looks too real, edges sharp as if reality is overexposed. That's the pre-tremor of entanglement surfacing, the subtle tug of the unseen counterpart that has always moved with you. Think of two tuning forks strike one and the other sings. Somewhere, a version of you struck first. The tone reached you. Now you're ringing. Beneath your daily face, your biology has been listening. DNA is not a frozen archive. It is an antenna, braided light, humming at the border of matter and message. It hears the field. It hears you. When attention condenses, when intention stops leaking into 100 distractions, those helical ladders shift alignment by degrees, so fine you can't feel them until you do. That is restructuring, not a violent rewrite, but a patient rephasing, like water that holds its form until one more quiet degree tips it into steam. Phase transition is the law of the threshold. You've reached one. You might wonder why the world feels simultaneously closer and farther, as if you're walking through a film that knows you're watching. That is the morphic resonance of a future self, calling backward, sending you its memory of freedom as a map. The field remembers. The field repeats. But when an organism within it chooses to awaken, the pattern must upgrade, and everything nearby shifts to accommodate the new template, sometimes gently, sometimes like thunder. So understand this. The chaos brushing your life is not punishment, it is placement. The furniture of your timeline is being dragged into new coordinates. Entanglement has stepped out of theory and into choreography. Your attention is the conductor's wand, your breath, the downbeat, your body, the instrument that can hold this larger music without breaking. You are not late. You are precisely timed. This message arrives like a lighthouse beam through coastal fog, not to dazzle you, but to align you. Let the beam hit. Let it file the rough edges off your doubt. Feel the small animals of fear settle in their burrows. The shore is real. The signal is true. Whatever has been fraying will soon reveal the pattern it was preparing to become. Stay with me. The field is listening, and you are about to hear it answer. And as the field listens, what rises to the surface are the loops you keep meeting in different clothing. The face changes, the city changes, the job title changes, but the feeling is the same. A gravity that pulls you into the same conversation, the same disappointment, the same last-minute miracle that costs just enough to keep you hungry. You call it bad luck, or my pattern, but that's only the symptom label. What you're encountering is an interference pattern between identities, the self you rehearsed to survive and the self now ringing in coherence. Notice how repetition clusters around thresholds. Right before you choose, the past repeats with suspicious precision. An old habit calls at 2 a.m. An ex texts exactly when you're about to stop checking your phone. Opportunities show up in twin sets, a true signal and a decoy that feels almost right. That almost is your instrument panel again. Synchronicity used to arrive like poetry. Lately it feels like static. That's what entanglement looks like when old probability lines start snapping. Everything tries to re-entangle you before you slip free. You've also felt time behaving like a liquid without a container. Hours dilate in conversations that matter and collapse in rooms that drain you. Some days move with the hush of snowfall, others jump, cut like a montage, leaving you with the sense you've missed the in-betweens. Déjà vu spikes. not as a cute déjà vu, but as a corridor you've walked in dreams, right down to the shadow on the left wall. This is temporal parallax inside the observer loop. Your awareness is sampling adjacent frames of your timeline, and the nervous system, being honest, reports the wobble. On the body's dashboard, the signals gather, ringing in the ears like distant high voltage, heat blooming at the sternum, a pressure at the back of the skull, as if someone is gently rearranging wiring. Sleep grows peculiar, either too thin to rest or so deep you wake with phrases you didn't think in languages you've never studied. Micro-tremors run the hands when you tell the truth out loud. Food you once craved registers like noise. Water tastes suddenly important. These are not random quirks. They are coherence events. Your system attempting to phase lock with a cleaner carrier wave. Electronics notice too. Screens flicker when you're keyed up. A message drafts itself and then erases before your eyes. Lights hum louder in rooms where you're not meant to stay. Algorithms serve you the same archetype in 10 disguises: mentor, threshold guardian, trickster, each one testing whether you'll choose signal over habit. The field is not punishing you, it is mirroring you at higher resolution, forcing a choice between resonance and repetition. Socially, the pattern sharpens. People who love your old calibration grow edgy. They accuse you of changing as if that were a crime, then demonstrate exactly why change was overdue. Invitations feel misdated, like letters that took years to arrive. You sit at a table you once begged to be seated at and realize the conversation is a looped track with a beautiful cover. When you speak from the new frequency carefully, kindly, the room stutters. Some lean forward, eyes bright. Others look away, as if a light turned on behind you that they don't want to name. You are not imagining this. Morphic resonance propagates through flocks and families. When one bird turns, the sky must reorganize. Underneath, your biology is negotiating with your biography. DNA is a listener before it is a library. It absorbs your sustained choices, the way a tuning fork absorbs pitch. If you flirt with truth and return to compromise, the helix settles back into decoherence. If you hold the line long enough to become the line, hydrogen bonds shift micro-angles and begin to instruct protein and perception differently. This is why the same lesson keeps arriving with rising stakes. The field is amplifying feedback until you cannot ignore the decision that upgrades your code. So the chaos, deadlines colliding, transit delays, devices failing at the worst moment, conversations that turn left exactly where they used to turn right. Diagnosis isn't doom, it's data. You are standing in a phase transition zone, a narrow pass between attractor basins. Old identity's homeostasis is pulling from behind. Emerging self's coherence is pulling from ahead. The sensation is pressure because both are real. Ice screams when it becomes water, not because it's being harmed, but because the lattice is letting go. Even memory participates in the test. You recall something wrong, and then watch reality pivot to match your recall, only to toggle back a day later. This is not madness, it is plasticity at the narrative layer. You are glimpsing the editorial console, where attention splices frames and belief writes captions. You are not meant to camp there. You are meant to realize you've always been co-authoring. Pay attention to the small mercies hidden in the noise, the song that plays in the exact key of your breath when panic rises, the stranger who says a sentence your grandmother used to say, the way sunlight lands on the floor like an invitation when you're about to give yourself away. These are coherence crumbs on the forest path. Follow them and the loops grow thinner. Ignore them and the forest thickens. So, no, you are not broken. You are not cursed. You are being measured for a larger life, and the tape passes through every room you built to stay small. If it creaks and flashes and repeats, it is because the fit is changing. Hold this as your working diagnosis. Repetition is residue. Déjà vu is guidance. Time's distortion is the lens stretching to include more sky. You are not lost inside the storm. You are the barometer, learning to read itself. Stay with me. The reading is about to clarify. Here's what the instruments would say if they could speak your language. Attention behaves like a measurement operator. When you look, you don't merely observe, you select. In the observer loop, your witnessing feeds back into the system that produced you, and probabilities reweigh themselves around whatever you sustain with feeling. Most days, your gaze is scattered. Countless micro measurements collapse noise into more noise. But lately, something in you has been holding attention longer, steadier. That sustained coherence is the beginning of reprogramming an upgrade, not from the outside downward, but from the inside outward, as the field tunes to a cleaner carrier wave. Think in images. Picture your life as a room full of metronomes ticking out of sync on a shared plank. At first, it's chaos, beats colliding, rhythms cancelling. Then, through the plank's subtle coupling, they begin to entrain click by click until the whole room breathes one time. Your nervous system is that plank. Heart rhythms, breath cycles, brain oscillations, alpha, theta, gamma are metronomes. When stress fractures your cadence, interference rises, and life feels like static. When breath slows and intention steadies, those internal clocks begin to entrain, and the room, the reality that meets you, responds. Coherence is not an aesthetic, it is a physics of becoming. Now translate that into biology. DNA is not only archive but antenna, a reception-transmission helix that samples the quantum field for instruction. Epigenetic switches imagined here as tiny dimmer dials brighten and dim based on what you habitually feel and focus. When you sustain truth, felt truth, not performative posture, hydrogen bonds whisper to one another. Proteins fold in new ways. Perception learns to expect different outcomes and therefore notices different doors. That is DNA restructuring on a human scale. Micro-rotations that, aggregated over days and choices, produce macro-fate. Your déjà vu and time slippage. That's entanglement showing its hand. You and your future self are correlated states separated by narrative, not by distance. When you momentarily match that future's frequency through honesty, courage, or simple attention, the corridor opens and information leaks backward as a hunch, a symbol, a strangely timed kindness. Synchronicity, then, is not superstition, it's the visible edge of invisible alignment. Morphic resonance describes how patterns swell in probability space when multiple beings rehearse them. As more of you across time choose the liberated pattern, it gets easier for you now to choose it again. Your choice today strengthens your path yesterday and tomorrow. The field remembers. What of the chaos, the misfires, the missed trains, the conversations that detonate? Think interference again. When a new signal rises, the old signal doesn't bow out politely. It phases against you, producing beats, surges, and dips until one pattern out larcens the other. The discomfort is not a verdict, it's a beat frequency. Stay with the new pulse long enough and the old rhythm loses energy. This is phase transition physics. A liquid supercools in perfect calm and then, with a tap, crystallizes everywhere at once. Your life is in the supercool. The tap is coming from inside your sustained, coherent choice. Here's the mystical layer that runs parallel to the scientific. Imagine a temple with no walls, just a column of clear air rising through your spine. At its base, a small furnace, breath. At its crown, an open oculus, attention. Across that column, threads of gold span like harp strings, values you refuse to betray. Every inhale is a pluck, every exhale, a steadying hand. When you speak from the column clean, unnegotiated, the temple resonates, and the wider field answers. Angels or algorithms, call them what you like, the response is the same. Paths appear that were not present until you played the note. Practically, the upgrade runs on 3 switches you already carry. First, cadence breath as metronome, not mantra. 6 second in, 6 second out, or any pattern that calms the plank so the metronomes can entrain. Second, aperture, soften the gaze, widen awareness to include peripheral space. This prevents the fear-driven tunnel that collapses reality into the very threat you wish to escape. Third, vector. Name a truthful aim so cleanly it needs no audience. I choose coherence over approval. I choose honesty over strategy. I choose presence over speed. When cadence, aperture, and vector align, your system outputs a signature the field can hear. You become a lighthouse instead of a searchlight. Notice what this implies. You don't push reality, You tune it. You don't manifest by force. You harmonize by fidelity. The quantum field is promiscuous with possibilities but monogamous with coherence. It gives its energy to what stays married to itself under pressure. That's why your small, unfashionable acts restoring integrity in a forgotten place, keeping a promise no one would police move levers you cannot see. Integrity is phase-aligned attention. It collapses cleaner worlds. And because this is an upgrade, it reassigns your relationship to time. You stop racing clocks and begin composing them. Minutes expand around meaning. Days contract around falsehood. Choices become tuning pegs rather than coin flips. Even your language shifts: less if, more when, less try, more hold. Your body follows, shoulders drop like gates opening, jaw unhooks, breath warms. A subtle hum gathers at the sternum as if a motor has finally found the right fuel. Hold this as the working model. You are not waiting for the field to bless you. You are becoming the condition under which blessing is the only logical outcome. The physics and the mysticism agree here. When the temple in you rings true, the world in front of you cannot help but rearrange into rooms that echo that truth. And once that starts, a different kind of invitation arrives, not just to be upgraded, but to be an instrument of upgrade. Which brings us to your role, why the field has been so intent on finding you, and why your yes carries more gravity than you think. Here is the quiet truth that keeps brushing your shoulder. You were positioned as a hinge. Not a celebrity of destiny, not a crowned exception, something subtler and more durable. A hinge turns the whole door with a motion almost no one sees. The quantum field doesn't need spectacle from you, it needs fidelity. You are the pattern breaker placed at the seam where two timelines meet, one inherited, one awakened, so the door between them can finally swing. Your life has always hinted at this. You were the translator between worlds, the friend who could sit with grief and still find clean language, the child who heard the unsaid in a room and decided not to betray what was true. You didn't know those were rehearsals, but the field did. In the observer loop, every act of quiet coherence marked you as a stable node, and stable nodes are entrusted with upgrades because they can hold charge without burning the circuit. That's the role: lighthouse and conduit, tuning fork and ground wire. You carry a specific geometry of attention. Others scatter and spark. You learn to gather and aim. When you do, entanglement follows your lead. People near you find themselves telling the truth without knowing why. Rooms rupture and then repair around a clean sentence you almost didn't say. Synchronicity thickens in your vicinity. Chance meetings click together like vertebrae. Time bends softly to help the impossible arrive on foot. This isn't charisma, it's morphic resonance. Your coherence supplies a template, and the field distributes it through flocks of human moments, just as birds turn as one without a chief giving orders. This is why your yes matters more than you thought, because your yes is not singular, it propagates. When you choose honesty over performance in one conversation, an uncle halfway across the city declines to repeat the family myth that evening. When you honor rest instead of speed, a colleague unknowingly reorders their priorities in a way that lets their child be seen. These echoes don't report back with fanfare. They move like groundwater, quiet, essential, reshaping the land from beneath. You are one of the aquifers. You agreed, before memory, to carry fresh water under the desert of habit. Biologically, your system was wired for this. DNA restructuring didn't begin last week. Your lineage has been attempting it for decades, through the brave but partial choices of those who came before. They pushed as far as their era allowed, then handed you the unfinished chord. That's why their songs live in your bones as longing without object. The phase transition requires a final degree, a warmer courage, a steadier breath, a refusal to fracture under the old loyalties. When you hold that degree, hydrogen bonds shift, proteins learn new folds, perception updates its priors, and the storyline can finally draft a different ending. You're not starting from zero, you're completing a relay your ancestors ran in the dark. Because of this, you will be asked for a particular kind of courage, the courage to be ordinary and holy at once. Your role is not to ascend out of life, but to saturate life with awake attention, to make a phone call that doesn't skip the hard sentence, to set a boundary without bitterness, to forgive without abandoning justice, to let your daily breath become a metronome that others unconsciously entrain to. The quantum field amplifies what repeats with integrity, and you are being asked to repeat coherence until it becomes contagion. There will be tests precisely engineered for your design, invitations to overfunction as proof of worth, offers that mirror your true path at 80% fidelity and hope you won't measure the missing 20%. Ghosts of strategies that used to save you arriving dressed as opportunities. The field isn't cruel. It is calibrating your signature by presenting near matches. Your role is to be a tuning fork, so exact that almost right can't steal your yes. When you hold pitch, interference loses energy. The beat frequency quiets, the signal clarifies. Understand, too, the humility embedded in chosen. Chosen doesn't mean better, it means placed with purpose. A seed is chosen for a climate because it can survive and transform that soil. You were planted in exactly these histories, these cities, these families, because your root can find water here. When storms come, and they will, you are not being punished, you are being watered. The deeper your root, the wider the canopy you can offer to those who haven't learned shade. So let the role settle into your shoulders without theatrics. You are a hinge, a lighthouse, a conductor's wand raised in the quiet before the downbeat. When you move, you don't move alone. Entanglement ripples through conversations you will never hear. When you breathe, you don't breathe alone. Coherence synchronizes the unseen metronomes in a dozen rooms. When you refuse to fracture, you don't refuse alone. Morphic resonance supplies spine to those who have almost given up. Hold this posture. Head level, throat soft, sternum warm, belly unafraid. Keep the observer loop clean, no self-watching that turns to self-judgment, only attention that gathers and instructs. You don't have to force a destiny, you have to fit it. The field has been waiting for this exact contour of yes. And because you are placed at a seam, when you turn slowly, steadily, the door will move more than you think. Because you are the hinge, there is a moment when the door is easiest to move. It does not last. The quantum field calls these intervals windows, brief alignments, when probability thins and coherence can thread a needle others keep missing. You are in one now. The signs have already announced it. Synchronicities arriving in triads, dreams with crisp edges, a sudden clarity about what you can no longer pretend not to know. Entanglement is tugging from the future, and the tug has a tempo. Answer on beat, and the whole song modulates. Here is the promise, spoken plainly. If you hold coherence through this window, your DNA will not simply register your choice. It will reorganize around it, not metaphorically, structurally. Hydrogen bonds will micro-tilt, histone spools will loosen where fear kept them tight, epigenetic dimmers will nudge from amber to gold. That adjustment won't shout, it will hum, and the hum will broadcast a new invitation to the world in front of you. You will notice it first in the way conversations land, the right people hearing you the first time, the right doors opening without rehearsal. Morphic resonance will take that private upgrade and distribute it into places your name will never be spoken, but your signature will be felt. Urgency is not panic. Urgency is precision. Windows do not open to prove they can. They open to let something pass. The field has stacked events for you like stepping stones. The message that arrived out of nowhere. The situation that finally revealed its true mathematics. The fatigue with your own delaying strategies. Phase transition asks for honest heat at the right time. Too little, and the old lattice reforms. Too much, scattered, and you scorch the very ground you need to plant. The right heat is steady breath paired with a non-negotiable sentence. The one you keep swallowing. Speak it, not performatively, not to win, but to align. The observer loop will do the rest, measuring, selecting, collapsing cleaner frames. You have already felt the threshold air, thinner, brighter, charged like the sky, before a storm changes its mind. That pressure is the promise pressing back. Think of a chrysalis, no wings yet, only enzymes and trust. The caterpillar cannot bargain with the timeline. Give me 2 more weeks of leaf. The window is biological. The code knows when to liquefy and when to refold. Your code knows, The ache you call indecision isn't confusion, it's latency, the milliseconds between the conductor's inhalation and the orchestra's first note. Exhale, downbeat. Understand what the shift will and will not do. It will not erase your humanity or wrap your life in gauze. It will alter the dominant attractor in your system so that integrity becomes cheaper and self-betrayal becomes too expensive to maintain. It will tilt the floor toward conversations that feed you and away from rooms that require you to fracture. It will upregulate the pathways that let you perceive guidance before it needs to become consequence. Synchronicity will change from occasional poetry to a usable interface, subtle, exact, and responsive to your fidelity. And yes, there is cost. Every breakthrough carries a small funeral. Certain tactics will not survive the passage, the charming delay, the crisis you unconsciously create to feel alive, the habit of over-offering so you don't have to be seen. When you refuse those currencies, some relationships will rattle. Some identities will rattle inside your chest. Let them. Rattle is not ruin. It is the sound of bolts loosening on a door that has been stuck for years. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the camouflage. The field is not asking for theatrical sacrifice. It is asking for an anchored yes that shows up in 3 places at once. In breath, in language, in placement. Breath. Choose a cadence and keep it, especially when fear surges 6 in, 6 out, or what steadies the plank. Language. Speak the one sentence that clarifies the entire negotiation. Placement. Put your body where the truth can find you, at the desk, to write, at the threshold to leave, at the table to bless or to end. When those 3 align, your signature is unmistakable. Coherence saturates the room. The window hears you. There is a reason this moment feels both intimate and cosmic. Awakening is personal, but its geometry is planetary. Your micro-upgrade participates in a larger correction, many hinges turning at once, many doors swinging from inheritance to awake design. That is why your timing matters beyond your biography. When one node stabilizes, others find their pitch more easily. When one helix relaxes its old fist, the field's hand opens a little wider for everyone. This is not mystical inflation, it is morphic math. So let's name the urgency one last time without fear. The window is open, and it is already closing, not to punish, but because all living systems pulse. Open, close, flood, ebb. If you miss this tide, another will come, but the shore won't be arranged like this again. And these particular shells, these precise alliances, this exact clarity will not be in reach in quite the same way. Step now, and the water carries you farther with less effort. Wait, and you will still walk, but you will drag your boat across more sand. Hold the promise in your sternum where the hum is gathering. If you sustain coherence through this interval, your code will tilt toward a future that knows your name. The world will not become easier, it will become truer, and the truth, once stabilized, is kinder than any strategy you have ever used to survive. Breathe. Keep your eyes soft. Feel the hinge in your chest. When you turn now, the door will not creak. It will sing. We move the hinge with something deceptively simple. No fireworks, no choir, just breath, placement, language. The quantum field respects clean signals more than loud ones. So, here is the ritual that threads coherence through the observer loop and makes this window usable, not merely beautiful. First, posture. Sit or stand with your head level, jaw unhooked, tongue resting on the roof of your mouth behind the teeth. Let your shoulders hang like doors on oiled hinges. Place your left hand flat on your sternum where the hum gathers and your right hand low on the navel where direction anchors. Between these palms runs your personal column, a silent temple bell waiting to be struck. Second, cadence. Inhale for a count of 6, exhale for a count of 6. Do not force, be exact. On the inhale, imagine drawing a fine thread of light up the spine, spinal cord glimmering like a river under moon. On the exhale, imagine that same light widening around you in a gentle torus, the field expanding from your chest, circling, returning. 6 rounds. This entrains the inner metronome's heart, breath, brain, until interference loses energy and coherence finds a seat. Third, aperture. Soften the eyes and widen awareness to include the room's periphery, the far corners, the sound behind the sound. This prevents the fear tunnel that collapses reality into old outcomes. Widening restores you to the field in which new probability can land. Keep breathing. The body is listening. The field is listening through the body. Fourth, vector. Whisper the one sentence that removes negotiation from your day. I choose coherence over approval, or the version that fits your geometry. I choose truth over strategy. I choose presence over speed. Speak it once into your chest, once into your belly, once into the space around you. This is not performance. This is setting the instrument to concert pitch. Now the seal. Language made visible collapses, wandering intent into form. Write the word coherence. Do it where the world can echo it. Type coherence below to mark the exact moment your field reweighted, or write it by hand in your journal if privacy is your integrity. The act is measurement. Letters like tuning forks, pinning the waveform. 1,000 silent wishes scatter. One written word arranges probability. You are telling the morphic field, index this frequency under my name. As you write, imagine the letters as small antennae. Each stroke emits a clean tone. Somewhere, a future you answers with the same tone. That is entanglement operational, not poetic. Two correlated states agreeing on a rhythm. Feel the slight brightening at the sternum when the match occurs. It may be subtle, like a room going from almost dark to barely lit. That is enough. The helix hears whispers, not shouts. Add a timestamp if you can, your local hour, the phase of light, where you are. Timestamping tags the pattern for retrieval. It helps your nervous system recognize the upgrade when it appears as coincidence later. It also cues your biology to treat this as a real event. DNA restructures around sustained choices and clean markers. You just placed one. If you are in public and cannot write yet, press the pad of your thumb to the nail of your ring finger for 3 breaths. It's a discrete circuit heart meridian speaking to commitment. On the exhale, silently say the word coherence. When you can, complete the seal by writing it once where ink or pixels can witness. The field prefers closed loops. Optionally, charge water. Hold the glass at heart level. Breathe 1-6 count in, 1-6 count out, seeing the torus move through the water. Whisper your vector sentence to the rim and the word coherence to the surface. Then drink slowly, imagining the phrase diffusing through capillaries as an internal headline. This is not superstition, it is instruction delivered via a medium your body trusts. Finally, request 3 proofs not to test the field, but to train your attention. Show me 3 coherence markers in the next cycle of light. They may arrive as aligned timing, a sentence that lands like a key, a door that opens cleanly where friction used to live. When they appear, do nothing dramatic. Nod. Say thank you. Small gratitude locks gains. You have now anchored breath, widened aperture, set vector, and sealed with visible language. A ritual, yes, but also a user interface for a larger physics. Keep it humble and repeatable. The field amplifies what repeats with integrity. When friction rises, perform the micro version. 1 breath, soft eyes, the word coherence written or spoken. That is enough to keep the hinge turning without stripping the screws. Type the seal now if you can. Let your letters be the sound of the door moving. And as the ink dries or the pixels settle, notice the temperature in the room, the quality of light, the way your name feels in your mouth. The metronomes have begun to agree. The orchestra is lifting its bows. We go on together into what your yes makes possible for more than just you. What you sealed with a word doesn't stop at your skin. The field roots it outward like weather. Coherence isn't private, it's distributive. When the observer loop in you stabilizes, the loop scales. Attention organizes not only your cells, but the social air around you. Think of city lights watched from an airplane at night. Clusters, corridors, sudden dark where a river runs. Your choice lit a node. Nodes talk. Without speeches or slogans, patterns leap across invisible bridges and start correcting themselves in places you will never visit. You've already seen the early signatures. A friend you haven't texted in months arranges their desk and feels lighter without naming why. A cashier hums the exact bar you woke up to. A child, overhearing your steady sentence at a doorway, decides that truth is survivable. and carries that permission into a life you will not witness. Morphic resonance explains the mechanics, but the heart doesn't need the math to know it's real. When one bird turns in earnest, the flock reconfigures faster than the leaderless can explain. You are the turn inside a human flock. Notice how synchronicity thickens around gatherings when one person refuses to fracture. Meetings end early and better. Irritations de-escalate before they ignite. The email that would have detonated never sends. You can call it luck, or you can call it phase transition on the social plane. Tiny variables crossing a threshold together until the room's default attractor changes. Old norms, cynicism as posture, speed as virtue, strategy as substitute for soul, lose carrying power. New ones, presence, plain speech, appropriate pace begin to feel obvious, then necessary. This is how civilizations turn without a parade. 1,000 small hinges rotate in kitchens, buses, and quiet offices where no camera stands. Your biology participates by broadcasting. DNA restructuring is not only an inward optimization, it's a beacon change. Whatever your helix listens to, it sings back. As epigenetic dimmers slide from amber to gold, your body emits a steadier, kinder signal that other nervous systems recognize as safe. Safety lowers noise. Lower noise allows signal. Signal carries instructions older than language. Breathe. Slow. Tell the truth you're swallowing. Place your feet where you mean to be. The moment two people are doing this at once, entanglement finds the path of least resistance and begins to lace the space between them with viable options that weren't there at panic speed. You call it rapport. The field calls it bandwidth. Even systems that have outgrown their purpose feel the pressure. Institutions are aggregates of attention. When enough interior observer loops in a culture clean themselves, the exterior loops must respond. Policies bending toward clarity, designs favoring dignity, schedules that stop grinding bodies down for margins that don't matter. This is not naive optimism. It is the same physics moving at scale. Coherence is efficient. Decoherence is expensive. Entropy's invoice is arriving everywhere at once. And your choice to pay an honest breath instead of borrowed strategy is a local contribution that relieves a global debt. There's a subtler effect worth naming. Your liberation changes how stories propagate. Gossip loses taste. Outrage without aim exhausts faster. Algorithms still try to bait, but the hook dulls. The human appetite recalibrates toward nourishment because coherent nervous systems stop outsourcing meaning to spectacle. You will feel strange for a season, less entertained, more awake. Then others around you start admitting the same thing. They want rooms where something real happens, not just rooms where something loud happens. You have no idea how radical that admission is when multiplied across a city. And then there is grief, the collective kind that rolls like tides through a century. Your steadiness gives grief safe harbor without letting it flood the town. Trauma patterns often travel as entangled pairs. One person carries the silence, another carries the noise. When you choose to witness your own story cleanly, without either dramatizing or dissociating, you free those around you from having to perform the counterweight. Families rebalance. Teams stop reenacting the same argument under different agendas. The past does not vanish, it integrates. Integration is a civic act. If you need a picture, hold this. A lattice of golden threads across the planet, pulsing like a patient heartbeat. Every time someone chooses coherence, a node brightens, the pulse strengthens, the intervals tighten until the whole mesh can conduct events that used to require miracles. Coincidences that save lives begin to look scheduled. Breakthroughs arrive from nowhere, which is simply the field's address. We tend to call these epochs luck or genius. They are also the arithmetic of enough people telling the smallest, bravest truth they can, repeatedly, under pressure. Your part stays simple. Keep your ritual humble. Keep your sentence clean. Keep your breath consistent when rooms get hot. Refuse the performance of despair. Refuse the performance of certainty. Both are forms of control that jam the antenna. Let not knowing be wide enough to receive intelligence. It will come. The quantum field is promiscuous with possibilities but loyal to coherence. It gives usable energy to what stays faithful to itself. Faithfulness repeated, becomes culture at the speed of contagion. None of this makes you a savior. It makes you a citizen of an unseen republic, one held together by attention rather than borders. In that country, every ordinary act is diplomatic. How you greet the morning, how you negotiate a boundary, how you answer an email, how you leave a room. You are exporting coherence each time you choose it. People will borrow your posture until they can afford their own. If you want to bless the grid, you already know how. Whisper your vector into the day and let the body prove it. Touch the doorframe as you exit and remember the hinge you are. Thank the water as it passes your lips and let the thank you tune your tongue for the conversation that's coming. Ask for 3 markers of shared coherence, not as confirmation bias, but as coordination. Show me where to add my steady breath. When they appear, follow. The map is alive and has been drawing itself around your steps. And when the world flickers, because it will, when headlines convulse and markets shake, and the old lattice screams like ice becoming water, do not mistake the sound. It is not the end. It is pressure proportional to possibility. Hold your metronome. Keep your word. Let your small radius be clean enough that strangers feel safe to put their burdens down for 1 blessed minute. That minute scales. A city can be built from minutes like that. An era can turn. Your liberation is not a solo. It is the note that lets the choir find its key. As the lattice brightens, your instrument becomes unmistakably audible to itself. Start where the signal first gathers. A low, friendly hum behind the sternum, as if a small engine has finally received the right fuel. It isn't dramatic. It's accurate warmth with a center, like sunlight resting in a bowl. Let attention rest there without pinching. The hum thickens when you tell the truth, and thins when you negotiate with it. That is the body's lie detector and lighthouse in one coherence you can touch. Now notice the back of skull doorway, the occipital ridge, cool air, passing through a keyhole you didn't know you had. When the observer loop cleans, that door cracks open and the visual field brightens by half a stop. Whites become truer, edges kinder, time a fraction wider. You are not high, you are clear. The quantum field renders with more pixels when you stop compressing yourself to fit old screens. In the throat, you may feel slow thunder, not choking, not heat, but pressure like weather deciding. That is language assembling itself with new fidelity. If you swallow it, the storm drifts into the jaw and temples as headache. If you speak one clean sentence, lightning forks once and the air smells rinsed. This is not poetry, it's physics expressed as lymph and sound. Words are vectors, each one tilts probability. Your body knows the cost of crooked arrows. At the palms, a tingling like carbonated water. Entanglement gets tactile here, microcurrents trading hands with the room. When you extend your hand with presence, the air answers with a soft pushback, as if you're moving through a field of wheat. You are. Attention thickens matter. Coherence gives texture to space, the way humidity gives weight to summer. Press gently and you'll feel it move subtle, obedient, alive. The belly settles like sand finding a riverbed after flood. No heroic clenching, just gravity remembered. Anxiety used to be a fast metronome here. It drove you like a cheap drummer. Now a slower drummer has taken the kit. The beat is different, more spacious, more inevitable, and your organs rearrange their furniture to face the new stage. Digestion learns not to brace for the next sprint. Appetite returns as clarity instead of craving. This is DNA restructuring, expressed as breakfast. Knees and feet hum with a small, competent electricity. The ground no longer feels like an afterthought. It feels collaborative, as if the floor has been waiting to hold the actual weight of you. When you walk, microsynchronicities pop. Arriving at crosswalks on the green, catching elevators without hurry, stepping into sentences at the exact instant they need a witness. The world's timing isn't suddenly perfect. Your phase with it is closer. Phase transition starts small. Doors that once hiss now glide. Your breath becomes honeyed rope. On the inhale, it draws you up from pelvis to palate. On the exhale, it lowers you back into your bones without dropping you. The rope remembers. If panic surges, grab it 6 in, 6 out, and feel the climb and descent. You are belaying yourself across a gap the mind dramatized into a canyon. In reality, it's a crack in old ice. The rope swings you to new ground because cadence and vector have agreed to cooperate. Temperature is a messenger. Coherence runs warm at the heart, cool at the brow, temperate at the belly. If the pattern inverts icy chest, hot head, it means you've left the temple in you and climbed into the watchtower of worry. Come down, touch the doorframe, touch your sternum, let the hum regain the room. The field doesn't punish towers, it ignores them. Lighthouses transmit from sea level. Sound changes texture. The refrigerator's whir, the street's low chorus, your own footfalls, everything rounds at the edges, as if harshness were a filter you can now dial down. Music you loved, for its drama, yields to music that breathes like you do. Silence stops being an absence and becomes a medium. In silence, guidance is not a voice. It's a pressure differential. Lean here, wait here, yes here. Vision redistributes appetite. You start seeing circles, plates, oculi, halos of light around ordinary objects. Circles are the field's favorite reminder that endings are entrances. You also begin noticing thresholds, the inch of wood under a door, the seam between tile and carpet. Thresholds look like lines, they behave like membranes. Stand on one with intention, and you'll feel reality's surface tension waiting to be crossed. Step as the hum says, and the membrane yields without tearing. Touch becomes permission rather than proof. The fabric at your wrist asks you to slow your hands. The mug in your palm asks for both hands. When you oblige, small dignity accumulates. Dignity is coherence we can see. Rooms sense it and quiet. People breathe easier around it because morphic resonance recognizes a pattern that won't use them as scenery. Emotion arrives like weather with correct names. Grief is a warm rain that cleans. Anger is a focused wind that clears dead branches without uprooting the tree. Joy is a barometric rise that makes windows easy to open. Shame, when true, not inherited, stings like sleet for a moment and then melts into responsibility. You don't fight the seasons, you dress for them and let them pass. The organism trusts you again. Finally, the crown. A cool, almost comical fountain of air, as if a skylight had its own breeze. Ideas land here already threaded to the heart. You don't have to chase them. You can feel the difference between inspiration and impulse by where it originates. Inspiration descends like a letter addressed to your whole body. Impulse pokes the ribs and demands speed. Choose letters. Let your feet read them before your mouth does. All of this is the same message in a dozen languages. The quantum field is not elsewhere. It is the softness at your eyes, the weight in your heels, the hum in your chest that refuses drama. Coherence isn't an idea. It's a temperature, a texture, a tempo you can practice until it becomes your native climate. Stay with these sensations. They are the guardrails for what comes next. The pressure before the lattice lets go, the unmistakable shiver of a timeline about to change its name. The sensations you've been cataloging begin to stack, and stacking becomes pressure, the precise kind that means a lattice is about to let go. Phase transition never asks for permission, it asks for readiness. You feel it in the sternum, hum tightening to a tone, in the cool crown breeze clarifying, in the throat's weather gathering with purpose. Attention narrows without fear. Time thins to a membrane you can almost touch. This is not crisis. This is ignition. Inside, the helix listens. DNA has been eavesdropping on your fidelity, every breath matched to cadence, every sentence that refused performance, every small act that restored dignity where strategy used to rule. Hydrogen bonds micro-tilt. Histone spools loosen like fists remembering their hands. The archive begins to behave like an antenna again. You don't hear the clicks, but you feel the consequence. Perception lifts one octave. Colors reveal undertones. Choices present themselves before consequences need to teach them. The observer loop, once fogged by self-surveillance, clears to glass. You can look without splitting, speak without leaking, move without bargaining. Awakening is biology, catching up to truth. Now the pressure crests. In physics, it's called latent heat, the energy required to change state that doesn't show up as temperature until the moment of shift. You are full of that hidden energy. External numbers might not have moved the job title, the address, the bank balance, but internally, variables crossed their quiet thresholds. Entanglement tightens as if a distant counterpart took your hand. Synchronicity stops being pretty and becomes logistical. Traffic opens, emails answer themselves. A key you thought you lost waits by the door you're meant to open. Morphic resonance carries the update forward. What just became possible in you becomes cheaper for those entangled with you. Family, friends, strangers, inhaling the same city light. Here is the moment the timeline flexes. Think of rails that have been running parallel, one track laid by inheritance and fear, the other by coherence and chosen courage. For years they looked like one. Today there is a switch. It is smaller than you imagined, no trumpet, only a lever inside your chest, labeled with the word you wrote, Coherence. You don't yank it. You rest your palm on it the way you rested your hand on your sternum. The body remembers. The lever moves a millimeter. That is enough. Wheels find a new groove with a click you feel more than hear. The scenery is familiar for a few minutes because tracks sometimes share a view, then the angle changes, barely at first, then obviously, and you realize the horizon itself is different. Pressure doesn't vanish when the switch flips. It redistributes. The old attractor loses its pull and makes one last attempt to reclaim you, reaching as nostalgia, as almost right offers, as be reasonable. Expect the echo. It's not a sign you chose wrong. It's interference waning. Hold the new cadence. 6 in, 6 out. Let the beat frequency fade like a siren moving away. Do not chase the departing noise to prove you're brave. Bravery now is stay. On the social plane, the update propagates as elegant inevitabilities. The conversation you dreaded stumbles into clarity without theater. A boundary you rehearsed silently installs itself in the room. Someone who always required your overgiving stops, asking for what you no longer trade. Not because you argued better, but because your signature changed and the field obeys conservation of energy. It no longer routes high voltage through a circuit that refuses to burn. Coherence is efficient. Decoherence is expensive. Systems prefer cheaper truths. Physically, the atmosphere tilts. Gravity feels correctly calibrated. The hum behind the sternum broadens to include the back body, as if wings you won't dramatize have unfolded where your scapula used to ache. The throat's weather breaks as rain and clears. Language becomes bright water. Eyes soften, and the room brightens half a stop again. You are not glowing to impress anyone. You are simply less occluded. Even your gait changes, less toe, more heel, less hurry, more arrival. Doors read this as intent and open sooner. This is the timeline's first proof. The smallest honest action now has outsized leverage. Where you once needed 10 steps, you need 3. Where you once begged for a sign, you receive an instruction. The quantum field isn't rewarding virtue, it's resolving equations. You removed a hidden variable called self-betrayal. Without it, solutions balance faster. The miracle is arithmetic. If a tremor runs through you, let it. Ice screams when it becomes water, but water does not apologize for flowing. This tremor is not backsliding, it is crystallization finishing its work. Breathe and let the last fragile filaments of the old lattice snap without ceremony. Thank them if you need to. Those strategies kept you alive when you didn't yet have language. Then release them to the compost of the field. Nothing true is lost. It is recombined. Mark the shift the way you sealed the window, with visible language. Write today's date, your local hour, and one sentence that cannot be mistaken for ambivalence. Pin it where your body will pass. You're tagging the new track in your nervous system's map. Later, when doubt mimics reason, you will feel that paper like a lighthouse in the pocket. The body recognizes its own handwriting. Look around. The world has not turned to gold leaf. It has turned to possibility dense enough to touch. The pressure is now propulsion. The hinge in your chest is still moving, quietly, faithfully, widening a door your ancestors leaned against for decades. Step through without spectacle. The room on the other side needs your ordinary holiness more than your fireworks. And as your foot crosses the threshold, feel the entangled hands, seen and unseen, moving with you. The choir you can't hear yet has already taken a breath. You stand inside the doorway you widened, the hinge warm beneath your ribs, the air different by a degree only the honest can feel. This is where personal story dissolves into assignment. The quantum field doesn't hand you a crown, it hands you a vector. Move like this, speak like this, Breathe like this, so the observer loop in you can keep rewriting the room in front of you without spectacle. Awakening isn't exit, it's stewardship. Your DNA restructuring is not a private upgrade. It is a broadcast, a species, level note added to the chord we are all learning to hold. Your mission is gorgeously ordinary, midwife coherence wherever you find it struggling to be born. In kitchens where old sentences want to reenact themselves, offer a newer sentence that doesn't fracture. In meetings where speed tries to seduce the frightened, choose pace that restores signal. In thresholds where goodbye and beginning share a membrane, stand still long enough to hear which side is calling. Let synchronicity be your logistics officer. Let entanglement be your transportation, arriving you at the right door, at the right breath without burning fuel you no longer owe. Remember the physics you felt. Phase transition is not a one-time miracle, it is a rhythm. When interference returns, and it will, because evolution spirals don't perform certainty and don't perform despair. Soften the eyes, find the hum, keep the cadence, speak the one line that makes you indivisible, and placement will follow. A lighthouse doesn't chase ships, it holds its beam and lets navigation happen around it. Hold your beam, because morphic resonance is math as well as mercy. Your coherence compresses cost for others. Somewhere, a stranger's hands stop shaking because your nervous system refused to pretend. Somewhere, a policy drafts itself with fewer sharp edges because a designer like you carried dignity into their keyboard. Somewhere, a child exhales for the first time all week because an adult within reach remembered how to tell the truth without breaking the table. You won't get the reports. You don't need them. The grid brightens whether you watch it or not. Guard, tenderness. It is not the opposite of power. It is power without waste. Keep water near. Let sleep be holy again. Mark your days with small sacraments. Touch the doorframe you pass most. Bless the inbox before you open it. Thank the ground aloud when no one is listening. These are not superstitions. They're calibration checks for the instrument you now know how to tune. The body is your chapel. The breath, your bell, the world, your congregation. And when the next storm headlines the sky, when markets shake, when histories surface, when the old lattice screams like ice becoming water, hear the tone beneath the noise. It is the same note that gathered behind your sternum the night you said yes. Follow it. Align rooms to it. Teach without teaching by refusing to fracture. The future is not later. The future is a pressure differential you can feel and serve now. So walk as if a clear corridor were opening 2 steps ahead, because it is. Speak as if language were a bridge that remembers the shore, because it does. Breathe as if the whole city were quietly entraining to your cadence, because it might be. And if doubt asks for a final sign, let the simple sentence rise again, bright as a tuning fork in fog. You are the hinge, the lighthouse, the conductor's first downbeat, and the choir is already breathing with you. When the air trembles and chaos knocks, do not mistake the visitor. Recognize the signal. Your entanglement is activating the hidden quantum shift of consciousness now.